The year was 1274 BC. Across the blazing plains of Syria, two of the greatest superpowers on earth marched toward one another. To the south came the armies of Egypt, glittering beneath banners of gold, led by the mighty Pharaoh Ramesses II, a king who believed himself chosen by the gods. To the north came the colossal forces of the Hittite Empire, commanded by the cunning king Muwatalli II, master of thousands of brutal war chariots. Between them stood one city. Battle of Kadesh, a fortress beside the Orontes River, a gateway to Syria, a prize worth killing empires for. And soon, it would witness the largest chariot battle the world had ever seen. But this is not merely a story about armies and kings. This is a tale of deception, of arrogance, of propaganda, of spies hiding in deserts, and of a pharaoh who walked willingly into a trap so massive it nearly destroyed his empire in a single afternoon. The Late Bronze Age was one of the most extraordinary periods in human history. Kingdoms stretched across the Mediterranean and Near East, like glittering jewels connected by roads, trade routes, diplomacy, and war. The Mycenaean Greeks sailed the Aegean. Babylonian merchants crossed Mesopotamia. Assyrian kings sharpened ambitions in the east. And across the seas and deserts, caravans carried ivory, cedarwood, wine, tin, copper, gold, lapis lazuli, and precious textiles between civilizations. It was a world deeply interconnected, a world rich beyond imagination, but also fragile, because every empire depended on the others. Trade fed cities, bronze forged weapons, and Syria stood at the center of it all. Whoever controlled Syria controlled the arteries of the ancient world, and two empires hungered for it above all others, Egypt and the Hittites. For generations, Egypt had dominated Canaan and southern Syria. The pharaohs of the new kingdom created a buffer zone of loyal vassal states to protect Egypt from invasion after the traumatic Hyksos occupation centuries earlier. For a time, Egypt shared influence in the region with another great power, Mitanni. But peace never lasts forever. Far to the northwest, beyond the rugged mountains of Anatolia, a new force was rising, the Hittites. Led by the brilliant and ruthless king Suppiluliuma I, the Hittites exploded outward in a wave of conquest. City after city fell. Mitanni collapsed beneath their assault, and with each victory, Hittite influence crept closer to Egypt's sphere of power. Then came the greatest prize of all, Kadesh. The mighty fortress city switched allegiance. Egypt's northern defenses began to crumble, and at the worst possible moment, Egypt itself descended into political chaos. The reign of Akhenaten shattered Egypt's traditional order. The so-called heretic pharaoh abandoned ancient gods, built a new capital, and plunged the kingdom into religious turmoil. After him came the fragile reign of Tutankhamun and the eventual collapse of Egypt's 18th dynasty. While Egypt struggled internally, the Hittites tightened their grip on Syria. Vassal states changed sides, Egyptian influence faded. Then came a new dynasty, and with it, a return to war. When Ramesses II ascended the throne in 1279 BC, he inherited an empire hungry to reclaim its lost glory. Ramesses was young, charismatic, fearlessly ambitious, and obsessed with immortal fame. He crushed pirates on Egypt's western frontier, restored military confidence, and built a magnificent new capital in the Nile Delta, Ramesses. The House of Ramesses. Even the city's name announced his intentions to the world. This was a king preparing for conquest. And in Syria, opportunity soon appeared. The kingdom of Amurru, caught between Egyptian and Hittite influence, likely switched allegiance back toward Egypt. For the Hittites, this was a direct challenge. For Ramesses, it was the perfect excuse for war. The stage was set. In 1274 BC, both superpowers marched toward Syria. Never before had the ancient Near East seen armies on such a scale. The Egyptian military was a masterpiece of organization. Ramesses divided his forces into 4 great divisions named after powerful gods: Amun, Rata, and Set. Each division contained roughly 4,000 infantry and 500 chariots. Together, they formed a deadly combined arms force of disciplined infantry, elite archers, and highly mobile chariot warriors. The Egyptian chariot was fast, lightweight, and deadly. Unlike later cavalry, these vehicles functioned almost like mobile missile platforms. Archers could speed across battlefields, unleash arrows, wheel away, and strike again before enemies could react. But the Hittites were different. Their chariots were monsters. Heavy, massive, built for impact. Each carried 3 warriors instead of 2, transforming them into Bronze Age battering rams designed to smash enemy formations apart. And King Muwatalli's II assembled an enormous coalition army from across his empire. Troops arrived from Ugarit, Carchemish, Anatolia, former Mitanni territories, perhaps over 35,000 men in total. This was no border skirmish. This was the Bronze Age equivalent of two superpowers colliding head-on. By late May of 1274 BC, Ramesses and his Amun division approached the city of Kadesh. The pharaoh believed victory was near. Then Egyptian scouts captured two Bedouin nomads. Dragged before Ramesses, the prisoners claimed the Hittite army was far to the north, days away. The pharaoh relaxed. The Egyptians had apparently reached Kadesh before the enemy. But it was a lie. The Bedouins were almost certainly Hittite agents sent deliberately to deceive the Egyptians. And hidden behind the hills near Kadesh, the massive Hittite army waited silently, watching, listening, preparing. Ramesses had marched directly into a trap. The Egyptian divisions were dangerously spread out. Amun had already reached Kadesh. Ra marched several miles behind. Ptah and Set were even farther south. Ramesses suddenly discovered the horrifying truth after additional prisoners were captured and brutally interrogated. The Hittite army was not days away. It was right beside him. Thousands of enemy troops and chariots hid beyond the hills. The pharaoh reacted quickly. Messengers raced south, ordering the remaining divisions to hurry forward immediately. But it was already too late, because at that very moment, the Hittites attacked. 500 Hittite chariots exploded across the battlefield. The ground thundered beneath wheels and horses. Dust storms swallowed the horizon. The Ra division, still marching in column formation, barely had time to react. Then impact came. The heavy Hittite chariots slammed directly into the exposed Egyptian ranks. Men were crushed beneath wheels. Spears shattered shields. Panic erupted instantly. The Egyptian formation collapsed. Some soldiers fled in terror. Others were butchered where they stood. The Hittite assault tore through the division like a bronze hurricane. Survivors raced north toward Ramesses' camp, screaming warnings of disaster. Behind them came the Hittites, and now the pharaoh himself stood in mortal danger. Inside the Egyptian camp, panic spread like wildfire. Soldiers scrambled for weapons. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Royal servants rushed Ramesses' family to safety. Then the Hittite chariots crashed into the camp itself. The defensive walls shattered. Tents collapsed. Men screamed beneath stampeding horses. For a moment, total catastrophe seemed inevitable. The Pharaoh of Egypt, perhaps the most powerful ruler alive, was on the edge of annihilation. And yet, the Hittites made a fatal mistake. Victory intoxicated them. Believing the battle already won, many warriors began looting the Egyptian camp instead of maintaining momentum. That hesitation saved Egypt. Inside his royal pavilion, Ramesses armed himself. He donned armor, placed the blue Kepresh war crown upon his head, and mounted his chariot. Ancient Egyptian inscriptions later described him as a divine warrior blessed by Amun himself. Reality was likely less dramatic. But what happened next was still extraordinary. Gathering surviving Egyptian chariots around him, Ramesses personally led a counterattack. The Egyptian vehicles surged forward at incredible speed. Arrows darkened the sky. Unlike the slower Hittite chariots, Egyptian crews remained highly maneuverable. They wheeled around enemy formations repeatedly, firing arrows again and again. The Hittites, trapped amid the cluttered Egyptian camp and disorganized from looting, struggled to respond. Then the Egyptian infantry joined the fight. Using curved Khopesh swords, they dragged Hittite crews from overturned chariots and killed them in brutal close combat. The momentum shifted. Suddenly, the invaders became the hunted. Watching from near Kadesh, Muwatalli II realized disaster was unfolding. He committed his elite reserve forces. Fresh Hittite chariots crossed the Orontes River and prepared to strike the weakened Egyptian camp once more. If they succeeded, Ramesses might still lose everything. Then, at the perfect moment, reinforcements appeared. The Niaran division. Fresh allied troops arrived from the north and smashed into the advancing Hittites. The battlefield descended into chaos once more. Chariots collided, archers fired point blank. Bronze blades flashed through clouds of dust and blood. Finally, exhausted and battered, the Hittites withdrew across the river. The fighting ended, but neither side had truly won. Ramesses claimed glorious victory. Egyptian temples later depicted him single-handedly defeating thousands of enemies like a god among men. Gigantic inscriptions celebrated his heroism across Egypt. But reality was more complicated. Yes, Ramesses survived the trap. Yes, his counterattack prevented total destruction. But strategically, Egypt failed. The Pharaoh could not capture Kadesh, could not destroy the Hittite army, and ultimately withdrew south. The Hittites retained control over Syria. Worse still, many Egyptian vassals rebelled afterward, sensing weakness. Kadesh remained in Hittite hands, so despite the heroic propaganda, the Battle of Kadesh was, at best, a bloody draw. At worst, a strategic defeat for Egypt. For years afterward, Ramesses campaigned across Canaan and Syria trying to restore Egypt's authority, but neither side could fully destroy the other. Eventually, exhaustion replaced ambition. And 16 years after Kadesh, history witnessed something extraordinary. Egypt and the Hittites signed the world's earliest surviving peace treaty. Former enemies became diplomatic partners. Royal marriages followed. Trade resumed. For a brief moment, peace returned to the Bronze Age world. But dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Within decades, mysterious invasions, rebellions, famine, and collapse would destroy many of the great civilizations of the Eastern Mediterranean. The Bronze Age collapse was coming. Empires would burn, trade routes would vanish, entire kingdoms would disappear into history. But before the darkness came, there was Kadesh. The day Egypt and the Hittites fought for the fate of the ancient world beneath the blazing Syrian sun. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have sure ideas, we'd love to hear from you.